Thank you to those of you who stuck around after lunch. Much appreciated. This is quite an interesting panel because we've got a great mix of the supply chain designers and developers. Just two things to note before we start. One is I have a 7-year-old with ADHD who will be asking me very detailed questions about the outcomes of my questions. So please make them solid so we can fact check them later. And we really want to get more examples of what you guys are doing in the industry. So 40% of global energy is now clean energy. So it gives us hope that we're on our way to a net positive future. 23% of our energy in the UAE is created from clean energy. Again, quite dynamic, and we're on the right path. So I'd like to start with Dr. Jagannathan, developer side, quite interesting. So we'll start with some kind of generic questions on what, as a developer, and while the market's specifically hot right now and sales and speed to market is really important, how are Sobha tackling sustainability, net zero, net positive, and what are your short-term and long-term goals to implement those?
Two broad questions.
Very broad.
Okay, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. And for those of you who are not that familiar with the Sobha Realty, it's a backward integrated enterprise with all key expertise available in-house. So it's more of 40,000 plus people working on the construction, facade, modular, furniture, architectural engineering, facility management, community management, and things like that. So that sort of backward integrated model helps us, gives us a lot of control over time, cost, quality, and sustainability. To your question on sustainability, what is Sobha doing? At the strategic level, all our buildings are designed for certification across different platforms. Some of them are going for LEED. Recently, one of the flagship property called developments called Sobha 1 that got Green Mark Super Low Energy Platinum certification from Singapore. That's the first one in the region and the first one of platinum outside Singapore. So we have over 30 to 40 million square feet of developments and different stages of certification with a specific focus on energy, water, and embodied carbon. And the Sobha one that I said with the green mark got a special badge for carbon badge, where we scored more than 10 out of 15 points. So at the strategic level, the buildings are certified or pursuing certification. And we also undertook a comprehensive greenhouse assessment of the whole Sobha group that includes not only construction, but all the other verticals that I mentioned across furniture, construction, then modular, and architectural engineering. All verticals were included in the assessment. Based on that, we started the assessment with scope 1 and scope 2 initially, and scope 1, 2, and 3 also all included. This year, we have done scope 3 not on the basis of amount spent, but on actual materials consumed to the extent of 40%. So that's a strategic point. In terms of actual implementation, we have looked at different alternate materials that are helping to drive down the carbon emissions. We are also looking for renewable energy. We have implemented them, and on-site greening of construction equipment. These are things to start. Probably over a period of time, we can touch the rest of that. Just leave the space for others.
So do you feel this has been driven from an ethical perspective? Is it financial? Is it some board compliance? What's driving that?
That's a very valid and very important question. As far as Sobha is concerned, it is driven by the management. We are not under any pressure by the mandatory authorities or by financial institutions to undertake assessments, to undertake green building certification, or to disclose our environmental social governance report. We are a private company, not listed. So the management is very strongly of the opinion that if the buildings have to be, if the developments have to be sustainable the way we are, the only way is to actually implement true sustainability, that which is impactful, not the notional one that we call or certification or whatever, but to have genuine impact on the ground. And that is the management's philosophy, and it is that which drives us at the moment. And the backward integrated that I said obviously helps us a lot, because once the developer says it has to be green, it goes down to sustainability, architectural, construction, FM, modular, everyone has to follow. So there's no communication gap across various stakeholders, as would be the norm in any other industry, or not any other industry, with any other developer. So this
is amazing, and I don't think you guys talk about it enough, because I haven't heard this. And when I think of Sobha, I didn't realize this commitment. Maf and Aldar talk about it a lot, but you guys need to talk about this more. This is amazing.
This is different.
Yeah. So coming on then to design, Shahana, how you've got a developer, he wants to do a net positive or a very sustainable project. We know Cundall are delivering some of the most sustainable projects in the region. How do you go about integrating passive design into your process?
Very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Shahana. Before I get into answering this question, I would want to say for people here who do not know who Cundall is. So we are an engineering design consultancy company, and we've taken a very bold decision that by the end of 2030, we're going to be working only on projects that have zero carbon design as their primarily goal. So having said that, it's a very ambitious decision, I believe, but then we also have a pathway to achieving this decision. And when we talk about developing tools, we have developed in-house around 40 tools to ensure that zero carbon design is not just an ask from the client, but it is us that is driving this mission. So having said that and answering your question, integrative design process or integration is one of the most important component of any building design. So we can start with the word integration. Mr. Jagannathan spoke about, from a developer perspective, that as Sobha Realty, they're investing a lot into ensuring this. But as consultants, our biggest job is to ensure the 3 C's of teamwork: collaboration, cooperation, and the last and the most important thing is communication. I mean, this is where the different design disciplines, they embed onto one platform to talk about integrative passive design. So it starts with the developer or the client who needs to set the right tone for sustainability, assign the budget that is needed to ensure sustainability principles are embedded in the design. Then comes the architect or the master planners who need to study the site in terms of not just come with the build structure, but the build structure needs to embrace, the existing prevalent wind conditions, the climatic conditions, the soil conditions. Then the structural engineers who need to work on a very durable building structure, encompassing, like strong, airtight built structures. Then comes your MEP team who has to work on energy efficient building solutions. And the most neglected of it all, landscape architects or landscape designers. Their job is not just to have landscape built around. Landscape actually act as natural barriers to sun heat, solar heat gain. And therefore, you need to be very smart in choosing what species you invest in, what do you adapt, what adapts to your local environmental conditions or climatic conditions where the project is. And therefore, it's like a mixed amalgamation of all these strong heads on one table to deliver an integrative passive design.
So what about water? We haven't really touched on water. Have you guys worked on any kind of water positive projects or very water efficient projects at Cundall? And how does that get encaptured into your plan with concept with developers?
So we're very lucky, actually, to work on master development projects, a lot of them, to be honest. And if you see the real trend these days in Dubai or within the region, I would say, there is a lot of emphasis on people selling their projects under the USP of forest living, or what you call it as lagoon living. And both of these actually come with extensive landscape that needs to be embedded within the master development, as well as huge water bodies. Now, for us to be able to think and have the net positive water strategies in place, it starts with mapping your water demand. What do you actually need to be able to make sure that all of these water requirements, indoor and outdoor, are calculated? And once you have those maps done, then you go into the 3 R's of sustainability, as we all know: reduce, reuse, and recycle. But what I would want to emphasize here is reduction is the key. You could have recycling done, but you're recycling at the cost of energy consumption somewhere and eventually CO2 emissions. So therefore, your main emphasis should be on reducing the water consumption, trying to retain in the name of reusing. There's a lot of investment that needs to be done in bioswales, rainwater harvesting, and also trying to make use of condensate water, because that is a major chunk of water that just goes wasted or in the drain for most of the projects. And then finally, what we propose is, rather than using the traditional way of solar treatment plant, there is a natural way as well. We've seen that implemented in Dubai Expo. And the way is they make use of aquatic plants like reeds and cattails that act as natural water purifiers. So what they do instead is they reduce the load on your sewage treatment plant when you talk about recycling. So all of these natural concepts, you talk about xeriscaping, you talk about having native adaptive vegetation, drought-tolerant species. So there is a lot to explore, but then as consultants, we really take pride in making sure that these are put across the table with the client for him to pick and choose. Thank you.
Good. And it's interesting to hear that you are into every single aspect and that every element has to be looked at and every element has an impact as well. I was at an amazing conference with Schneider about 2 years ago where their CEO said that the technology for net positive buildings exists today. We could make every building in the world net positive today if we had the capital investment and the will to do it, which is quite interesting. So I guess for me, it's a stage process. We can't change things in a day, but we know after COVID, where there's a will, there's a way. So I guess the next point then, we've got the planning, we've got the developer on board, he's committed to being net zero. Cundall have come up with the solutions or the potential issues and all the impacts that are possible. From a technology perspective, Margarita, what are one of the best technologies, that your company or that you've seen in the market, and what kind of impact does that have on the bottom line with regards to both energy, water and cost?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Margarita. I am working with Enernouva, and we are doing energy efficiency in the buildings in the hot water area with the thermodynamic solar panels. So we are the master distributors here in the region, and we cover India, Pakistan, Seychelles, and Maldives. So we have very good case studies. Actually, we have more than 650 projects in the region. So when we're talking about for the technology, what actually I heard about your concerns about as well for the developer and the consultant, we are consider everything. And when we do design the building or technology, actually when we're talking about for the net zero building, net positive, we need to talk about for the resilience, okay? Because we live in very particular environment, because we face extreme temperature, salty environment, high humidity, and as well salty environment, thunderstorms, this is everywhere. And most of the year we don't have lights. We have thunderstorms, so the light is not covering 365 days. Actually, we have the weather conditions, and as well we have the challenges in the building. Actually, the power load is very important. The limitation of the space is very constrained, and as well for the retrofit challenges. So when I hear developers for the Sobha, they are in several stages where the power load is concerned. So when we're talking about the integration of the system, we need to consider all of since the beginning stage as part of the specification for the consultant. So when we're talking about with the consultant side, we have to be part of the specification. So when we consider the thermal power that you need for your building, what is the demand, we need to understand, and then we can cite the system. Actually, the thermodynamic is a tailor-made solution. Okay, and then when we're talking about for developers, so they're looking for the certification. So then our system, the thermodynamic, is with monitoring system, we show in the real scenario what is the value that we added, and then they can achieve certification or LEED, BO4, because in the LEED, one of the LEED, they need monitoring system. So in the combination of the weather condition that we have, so we need a system adaptable for the Middle East condition. Okay, so then we have a very good system to adapt it to for the environment and good performance. So now we're talking about for the more realistic scenario. So most of us, what is the first thing that we do in the morning? So we take a shower, right? So in the system, he gives us the comfort. This is an electric assistance or boilers. So these systems who consume a lot of energy, electricity and fossil fuels like LPG or diesel boiler, and as well they're running 24/7, and as well they generate a lot of emissions, okay? So other good question is, they come with the people say, why I need 60 degrees to the hot water? Actually, it's very important because we need to clear Legionella bacteria as per the municipality regulation. So now, we see all of the requirements that we need for the weather condition, the technology. So we need to consider all of these requirements because hotels and the hospital or healthcare, the demand of the hot water is very high. And then, from my perspective, so for the integration of the system in the weather condition, like a thermodynamic, little bit break, because most of them don't know what is thermodynamic. Thermodynamic is a system who absorbs the temperature surrounding more than 0 degrees. So it works during the day and the night. So if thunderstorms or in the night, so we don't have light, but we have a lot of temperature in the night. So for example, 5 degrees outside, we absorb in this temperature and produce hot water for the building. So when we're talking about for the limitation of the space, thermodynamic, we can start in the rooftop, in the middle, in the facade, even in the parking. But they say, why in the parking? Because it is a palm room. So in the parking, for example, we have more than 23 degrees in the winter time. This is a very good conditions for us. So we absorbing this temperature and produce hot water. So we know whether the system is adaptable for here because we have 1,650 projects that we show that the system works. So when we replace electrical heaters or boilers, the savings is between 85 or 95% in the cost of the operation, and as well for the carbon footprint. So everything we know through the monitoring system.
85 to 95%?
Yes,
wow.
For the electrical heaters. And then when we're talking about for the building, they want to achieve sustainability, okay, we have the information through the monitoring system and we give to them and they can achieve certification. This is how the technology is integrated in the building.
It's probably, you mentioned that it's mandatory from DM to have solar hot water now as well, although your technology is more advanced than the mandatory. So we can see the government here are also starting to push for some of these renewable energy as well. Are you working on any net zero projects at the moment?
Sorry?
Are you working on any net zero or net positive projects currently?
Oh yes, absolutely, yes. So as part of net zero building, we have, thermodynamic. So when one of the characteristics of the thermodynamic is that we have the refrigerant fluid inside of the panel, okay? So produce ice. But the one panel produces 1 kilo of cooling. So it depends on the number of the panels we have cooling, okay? So one of the projects that we have here, for example, is in the first net zero building. So actually we have, you can imagine, so in the rooftop of the building, there's PV solar, who generate electricity. So below of the PV solar, we can install our thermodynamic. So we reduce the stress of the PV solar. Actually, the PV solar, they have a lot of stress, more than 90 degrees temperatures. So the stress is very high. So when we install our thermodynamic below of the PV solar, we absorb the temperature surrounding, we reduce the stress, and we have hot water. So the combination of two systems, thermodynamic but PV solar, so it's net zero building. This is one of the advantages of net zero building. Actually, there is a lot of examples how the combination of the integration, that the side effect of the thermodynamic in front of other systems.
Mohammed, not all developers are as ambitious as Sobha, and net zero isn't part of most developers' DNA right now. how are you approaching bringing your project out to market and getting the end user or developer involved? Although you have great designers like Cundall, which can give great advice and they can present numbers, but how are you influence at developer level so those developers are thinking in a different manner of investment and ROI, etc.?
Thank you. Great question, Louise. So my name is Faisal Aziz. I work for Schneider Electric as a principal consultant with a very interesting intersection of technology and sustainability. To answer your question, Louise, I think we need to take a step back because in general, if you see at how the industry operates, it's a very fragmented industry. So you have the landlord, and then you have the investors, then you have the building occupiers, and then you have the FMs, and there's a variety of different stakeholders who are involved in the process. Now, when we hear a statement where the customer or the end user is wanting to be net zero, net positive, these words and these terminologies are used interchangeably without really understanding the real effect of that word. So for example, my first step of really working with developers is doing a very educational workshop, a value discovery workshop, which we call internally as a VDWS. Now, what this value discovery workshop really entails is, Mr. End User, what is your end business? Are you wanting to keep this property, sell it, have it long-term? So there are different business models, right? And therefore, we basically work with them accordingly to develop different use cases, develop different ideas on how they can attain that particular use case, right? And also educate them a bit more that if you want the building to be net zero and net positive and beyond, then buildings alone cannot work in isolation. You need to have grid interactive buildings. And that means there is going to be a very strong interplay between the grid operations and how the building responds to it. And for that to happen, what I really mean by grid interactive buildings is buildings are like living organisms that respond to the occupant needs without having any manual intervention. For example, we're working on one of the iconic buildings in Europe at the moment. And why I say Europe, there are many examples in Europe and I would say in other parts of the world, because the maturity over there is a bit more stringent. They have more maturity. Why? Because it's driven by policy. It's driven by mandatory requirements. You have Local Law 97 in the US. You have the Minimum Energy Performance Standards in Europe. You have CSRD. ESG is becoming, I would say, a way to attract capital now. That's the number one thing to understand. So that's the reason they want to embed sustainability into their operations, into every built environment and every portfolio. Now, we're working on this building and in Europe, which is basically an iconic building, which is called...
Existing building or new?
It's an existing building, okay, and it's called The Edge, okay. You can have a look, you can go find The Edge, and there's a very interesting case study, which is a net positive building, by the way, where we were involved right early from, in the process, that here are different, business levers. We want occupant productivity. We want health and safety, which is our biggest concern. We want energy efficiency, and they had a number of different business levers. So we broke it down into multiple things, right? And we basically started developing use cases and looking at what the current business state has, what the existing building systems are. And to our surprise, it was not about replacing existing equipments with more efficient equipments. That was the fewer steps ahead, but it was really about connecting those existing systems together so that they can start talking to each other. Now, one of the use case was, okay, let's imagine a day of an employee in the office. How does he come to the office? He comes into his office, enters the building. There's an automatic number recognition system which recognizes his number plate. There's a seamless access into the building. He already has booked a space in the office, so the elevators exactly know on where to come, which floor to take the person to. Using indoor navigation, you can actually go and find your right office space. You can adjust your environmental conditions based on, the daylight based on, for example, your preference, your personalized experience in the office, and then you can also book car parking spaces and know what the available EV spaces are. So it's about that experience, that user journey that we define for each and every stakeholder. And from there onwards, we start building out technology. So I would not say that we start talking technology first. We start talking use cases and talking about their business levers. But definitely, one thing that I would like to end with this is that technology is the key enabler in order to achieve net zero and beyond. So, yes.
I think I read a statistic that 30% of energy is a reflection of behaviors and not requirements. So if you take what you've said on buildings talking to each other and people not having to think about it and press buttons on thermostats and do an extra loop around a car park, then all of these things are like 30%, well, huge energy reductions.
And now there is a concept, I don't know, many of you have already heard it, it's called prosumerism. Okay, now
what's it called, sorry?
Prosumerism.
No.
Prosumer is a term which means being a producer and a consumer at the same time. So buildings, you've probably heard this in the e-commerce industry, prosumerism, but now buildings are prosumers, where they're now generating and consuming at the same time. Buildings are now enabled and they're able to talk to each other and share energy. And this is just not I would say, an idea only. This is something that we're now implementing in greenfield developments in the Saudi region. Because now in Saudi, with all the great developments and all the learnings from all the consultants and, they worked on iconic buildings around the world, now they're bringing all that knowledge into a place where they can start from scratch. Right from selecting the building orientation to looking at solar shading analysis, having the right kind of passive technologies and architectural elements, but then also clients are now seeing and bringing OEMs not at the end of the conversation, which has traditionally been happening, because traditionally we would bring our technologies right when the building is at the end of its construction, right? But now we're having a seat at the front table right from the beginning, where we prescribe without talking brands, without talking the technologies, but we really prescribe how do we achieve that? What ratings are you able to achieve? Let's say if you're achieving LEED Gold, LEED Platinum, okay, because nowadays I'm a LEED AP myself, so I would say, okay, well, do you have a LEED scorecard? And let me just see where we can make the biggest impact. Because as an OEM, yes, we can make biggest impact on IAQ and energy categories, for example. We may positively contribute on water as well. Because with water, there's water submetering, there's so much that you can potentially do. But there is lesser impact, but there is contribution where we can provide, in different, even sustainable sites. One of the credits is lighting pollution reduction. So we have controls which can be programmed using the BMS to automatically adjust their schedules based on the weather conditions and lighting conditions. And last and not least, I think that there's a survey by JLL, which I recently came across, that 74% of investors are now taking technology as insufficient technology as a key barrier to environmental goals. That means there is a digital gap. Whenever we go ahead and even decide to retrofit a building or whatever, we need to understand for a greenfield development, definitely how to bring mechanical and electrical and smart buildings together under Division 25, which has traditionally been 23 and 26, from a consultant standpoint. But then we understand Division 25, we already have a draft or template which is available, which we give to consultants that, hey, we already have something which is prepared. When it goes out to tender, how do contractors then kind of bring those use cases to better understand integration, which has been the biggest issue in the construction industry.
And that's where that education piece comes in, right?
Yes.
Show us the case study, show us the ROI, and then we're willing to sign up, right?
Even on the ROI, let's not focus on the carbon reduction only. When we say, okay, well, what's the ROI of having this technology? Well, and what's the carbon reduction? Well, let's look at the environmental aspect, but also look at and incorporate the social aspect as well. That means the productivity of employees And there is a research by JLL, again, I keep referring to JLL because they're one of the leaders in real estate research and all that. In an office environment, for every square foot, you have $3 which are spent on utilities, $33 on rent, and $300 on salaries. So when we talk about, we're all focused on the 3 and 33 component, but we're not focused on the 300, which is the biggest expense in a business, human resource, salaries. How do we make them more efficient? How do we make vacancy rates much better? How do we make productivity, health and safety, air quality, which should be factored in when calculating ROI?
There's also the valuations, etc. There's so many ROIs for sustainable buildings. Ahmed, sorry we kept you to last.
No problem.
The UAE has affirmed its commitment to AI this week. Mr. Trump's in town. We can talk about that later. Actually, we could talk about it now because you're interested in fight, right?
We could talk about that now.
Everyone, one comment on Trump, joking. So with the commitment here to AI, and I know you guys are trailblazing in some of this stuff that you're doing at the moment, what role do you think IoT and AI are playing in some of this stuff that you're doing?
Okay, good afternoon. This is Ahmed El Dessouki, Johnson Controls Hitachi Air Conditioning. Thanks, Louise, and thanks for being here in this great panel discussion. Just to let you know something before talking about the IoT and AI, because it's going to come later in the discussion, I want to start with something very important. In order for us and the developer and consultant to achieve the net zero building efficiency, we have a very important and a key element in this role, which is the air conditioning. Knowing the air conditioning is consuming more than 70% of the energy in the building, then it becomes a major player in achieving the net zero. And in order to achieve this, then it's not only about the manufacturer, it's about the whole cycle of the project. It starts with the developer who decides, yes, we need to go for a net zero building, designer who can implement this on reality, on the papers and make it on ground, and then comes to us as a manufacturer and then one of the major equipment suppliers in the building, which consumes, as we said, more than 70%. At that point of time, they make our life easy whenever they have this decision and this alignment, because we overcome a big role and a big time once we have this in place. Because not every developer and consultant is ready to spend to have their buildings on the net zero. As you said, if there is a will, there is a way. So the will is there, the way is there, and we go help and done because we work at a global pace. When we develop a product, we don't just develop it for a specific region. We work on a global standard where now when we look at the external region like US, Europe, the net zero is there since a long time and they have been implementing it and the equipments are there. So we are ready to help implementing this on ground with the higher efficiency products, lower power consumption, and it's not only about the product efficiency and consumption, it's about the IoT and AI. Because if you have the best efficiency of product and you don't control it and you don't monitor it properly, then it's going to be a waste of energy, waste of money. Then we will lose the advantage of all this. And it's all about as well the tenant, the user, okay? Because if you gave the best performance product with the IoT and AI and you don't educate the end user how to use it properly and ensure that he has the same understanding like you, that we at the end we need to reach to a net zero, then there's no point. So it's the whole cycle, it's the whole chain. And the good thing that UAE is one of the leading countries into these strategies and plans. Since years, they have started talking about the higher efficiency products, and they started putting the regulations to ensure that the efficient product only comes into the country, and that was the best step ever done. And now the regions, the countries are, among the regions are following. And that's a good thing. The UAE have been the leader and the rest are following. And Saudi now is taking from wherever the others have landed, and they are
The
even
competition's
upgrading.
working to our advantage. They all want to be the best at.
Exactly. And having the IoT and AI collecting all the information about the system and letting the AI decide on the behavior sometimes to take over the behavior and do it on behalf of the client or the end user, that helps a lot. And we do have the tools and the equipments which can communicate between the installed units and the tenant requirement and the schedulings, programming, power consumption, preventive maintenance. Because if you have the best product and you don't maintain it, then again, there is no point. So it's the whole thing together has to come to be able to achieve the requirement, which is the net zero.
Do you want to answer that on Mike? So you guys are working on giga projects, you're working on small, everything from a giga project to a small fit out.
Yeah.
How are you seeing scalability and modularization kind of working across all end-to-end solutions? Are you building it for modularization and scale?
We do have samples which we have built in the different levels of projects on the small and medium and mega projects as well. And we do make like some case studies to sit with the clients and developers to tell them, okay, this is a case where we have built for a similar size of your projects, and this is the outcome, where we managed to save more than 30–40% of the energy consumption, and that's coming back to your pocket as a developer, because you're gonna save this amount into your pocket from the beginning. But doing it later is not gonna work. It has to be done now. It will pay off more than what you spend now in the beginning. Maybe you will spend a little bit more on the CapEx, but OpEx will be much lower. And we do have different case studies for different levels of projects and volumes where we prove such cases, which with numbers and evidences and reports to show the reality to the customer and end user.
You know, it's quite interesting because a couple of years when COP was coming to the Middle East, everybody was on the sustainability bandwagon and everybody wanted to say they were sustainable. But it's really interesting that you guys are working on real net zero projects and you're not trying to advertise it, right? You're trying to deliver projects that are net zero. You have a product that is contributing towards it. You're showing an ROI of what it is and you're committing to all your projects being net zero, right? That's completely different to where we were 3 years ago. And I think people are starting to see the real value on it in all the ROI senses, which is pretty good. I guess one kind of final question to all of you is, we're in this room and we understand what you're saying because we're in this industry, but there's a lot of people out there that are uneducated and we all have different roles to play in how we kind of send that message out there and kind of give all these great stories to them. What do you feel? We'll start with you, Doctor. What do you feel your role is outside of Sobha in bringing the kind of not net zero, net positive, more sustainable kind of commitments, not your commitments in the region? What do you think your role is in that kind of supply chain or chain of construction?
Thank you. Again, sorry for the phone call. See, we have moved a long way in the field of sustainability, right? Moved a long way on two aspects. One in implementing genuine technologies and the other one in talking. So unfortunately, the second one has now completely engulfed. There are a lot of discussions, talk about Paris climate deal, net zero by 2050, time-bound emission reduction targets by 2030. And we are not, we means not we, but generally the industry, the market is beating the drum on all that. And as we do that, we are relying on so many things that are anticipated to come in future. And technologies that might be in the research and development, they have to go to demonstration, then deployment, commercial availability. So till those things come, net zero, net positive is not going to happen. And on top of it, there is a distraction from environmental, social governance and the climate risk. Don't mistake me, I'm actually into doing all of those, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of talk on those and less on actions on the ground. So if you're talking, in 1990, the net renewable energy percentage of the total power was 20%. And it is still the same now. So when you're talking of net zero, that means each and every sector, the power sector, transportation, industry, shipping, aviation, everything should be zero. And that's why I said that's quite far in the horizon. But we should not lose track of what is under our control. So that's where the concept of demand side management comes in. So we cannot have huge power consumption or uncontrolled demand from on side, and then talking about energy conservation, water conservation, smart cities, AI. It doesn't seem to work. So AI is going to take over certainly, but that cannot be a replacement for natural intelligence. That means we have to take stock of the situation and look at what we are consuming currently, how we can reduce. That's where the brief of the developer comes. Instead of saying, I want a super duper tower or with a LEED platinum or whatever, if there is another metric, say I want energy usage intensity of 110 kilowatt per square meter, or water intensity, or embodied carbon. Embodied carbon is something on which we do not have control at the moment. If you want to, we have done the emission calculation. If you take off scope 3, steel, concrete, aluminum, insulation, tiles and things like that, they are responsible for over 95%. If you take off cement and concrete alone would be probably, if you give concrete as a name of the country, it would be the 4th largest emitter in the world. We do not have alternate chemistry yet. So there are technologies which inject carbon dioxide into the concrete to reduce by 3 to 5%, which we are buying. There are technologies which reduce carbon within cement, which we are procuring, but they are not going to be available for the whole industry, by everyone. There are few who are doing that. There is a company based in Europe which is a non-clinker based cement, but non-clinker based cement follow different standards that cannot directly come under the purview of regulatory authorities. So there's going to be issue. But when we do the design, if you are trying to optimize with the active and passive design, as my panelist from Cundall mentioned, you can at least reduce a net energy demand. Once you do reduce a net energy demand, then try to overcome that with the most energy efficient equipment, most appropriate controls, and then good monitoring. And then if the regulations permit, go for renewable energy. So renewable energy add-on or offset should be only after you reduce the demand to the lowest. You cannot have a very irresponsible energy consuming and then putting renewable energy to make it net zero. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense. So if from my point of view, I would rather put a lot of emphasis on optimization, demand side management across all the parameters, and less and not get tempted or drifted too much towards the fashion statement of ESG or net zero. They are there, they are very important, but not for everyone. So we have to do our part to support them in that. So if everyone talks about them, there will be no one to roll up the sleeves and do the job. So that's my humble point of view. Thanks.
Thank you. Shahana, I'm still very impressed by Cundall's commitment to only work on on projects that are going to have net zero or net positive commitments. How are you going to convince your clients who are have not made that commitment to join the Cundall Club and remain your client?
So this is not something that it's taken 2 years to develop a plan. And it's not something that we decided one day, okay, from 2030 onwards, we'll not participate in projects. There is a plan to make sure we have offices in 25 countries worldwide. So it's not me sitting here and making this call. It is in tandem to every engineer or every workforce that is united as one. And the most important objective is to create awareness. And it's not just about us deciding. We have started that plan already. We have advocates within each office locations.
Well, how are you convincing your clients? That was the question.
How do we engage with clients is we offer this to them, even though they don't ask for it, for them to have that visibility. And then what I would want to emphasize here is that, yes, I mean, I partially disagree with what Mr. Jagannathan said, that, net zero is not possible, because we have to make it possible. See, sustainability is no more a choice, it is a mandate. And with that ambition, we have to get the clients onboarded with us right from the beginning of the project. Reduction is possible, and we also cannot disregard the growth that the company is, or the countries are, making. Just talking about UAE, so we cannot compare, the consumption or CO2 emission of UAE a decade ago or 2 decades ago, because we have massively grown from there as well. So there would be a steep increase, but the most important thing is create that engagement, get the visibility, show them the benefits of what they're going to achieve, because if you see the life cycle of the building, it's 20-80 rule. 20% is the initial capital investment, but the rest, 80%, lies in your operational cost to maintain that building for the rest 20 plus years of the life cycle. So the target is to open their eyes to that 80% and not just stop at the initial 20%. Thank you.
I actually think what he meant was it still is a choice for people. It's not a choice for the world, but unfortunately there are still decision makers that are making the wrong choices. So we don't get to choose. Margarita, what's your I guess from my side, the product, whilst very innovative and from a holistic point of a whole building, when people are looking at giga projects, how do you get in and kind of impact a giga project or a huge project with your product?
Actually, it's the way around. Actually, we are working very closely with the engineering team. So the engineering team in the building, they have 2 goals, very clear goals. One is reduction of the cost of producing the hot water, and the other one is sustainability goals for the property. So, and then we come together and to see whether you have, what system do you have, and then we implement it. Actually, we have a very good examples how we can engage with the hotels. For example, hotels is hospitals that are the big buildings, how the demand is very high. So for sure they have a problem with the systems, and they want to have a savings, and for the owner side, and as well for the future, it will be for sustainability. So the goal is in the middle. So for example, we have one hotel in Fujairah, is in front of the sea, high corrosion. So for a system, we installed 128 panels in the rooftop. But the Miramar, for example, had a strong idea for the engineering that he wants to do, full resort and achieve sustainability in all of the ways, okay? And then we have, for example, petrol stations. Petrol station, they say, why we need petrol station? Actually, for the staff accommodation, because they have a roadmap internally and they want to achieve sustainability. Okay, and then we have, for example, other buildings, they have space construction limitation, and then we engage with the client, what do you have? So most of the buildings, they don't have a space in the building, like a Radisson Media City. So in the Radisson Media City, if you have the opportunity to go to the rooftop, they have a lot of equipments, they don't have a space, but we help to them to create a new area to install the system, 128 panels with double power, thermal power that they need to produce hot water at 60 degrees. So we adapted our system, depends on the needs of the engineering. So we help to them to achieve, reduce the costs, and at the same time achieve sustainability. So, and as well, one of the things is, most of the buildings in all UAE and the region, they don't have power load. So they need to reduce the load consumption for the electrical water heaters. So when we reduce the consumption, so they have more load available for the other equipments. And the savings is very good. So depends on whether they need, so we help to them to achieve their goal. This is the way around. We help to them.
Thank you. And Faisal, how do you, when you enter a room with a real estate owner who has 200 buildings in the Middle East, what's your kind of first pitch to them on what they should do?
I have 1 minute. I just have 1 minute, so I'll make some very quick points. Number one, why are we doing this whole net zero conversation, pledges? Because with our current trajectory, if we don't halve our emissions by 2050, we're already on a 2.5 degree pathway. Being on a 2.5 degree pathway has serious consequences. We don't understand that yet. We see this around. Catastrophes, climate catastrophes are happening right in front of us, and this whole notion of net zero is to reduce those emissions, number one. Number two, if I go to a client and talk net zero, the client says, what are you doing in terms of net zero? Do you have a net zero journey in place? Well, we say we're the #1 sustainable company in the world. Go and have a look. We're going to be net zero ready in our operations by 2030. We're going to be, we have our proper 2040 and 2050 plan. But the mid-century ambitions are no longer valid. We have to reduce, as of today, the carbon intensity is around 35 kg CO2 emissions per meter square. And to go to net zero by 2050, we have to reduce from that 35 figure to 0.4 kg of CO2 equivalent per meter square. It's a huge, kind of reduction, right? So giving that kind of context is very important, number one. Number two, we have to, like I said, understand the customer's business. If it's not in for them, if I see someone is talking net zero and they do not have a chief sustainability officer in their team, that means they're not serious. Simple as that. That's my personal indication that they don't have a sustainability person, a sustainability team, or at least a chief sustainability officer who's driving that agenda, but they have that net zero ambition. It's very difficult to close ambition to impact. So we all have ambitions, but what is the action behind it? As to Mr. Jagannath is basically saying, and so many others, that we will all be disappointed from all these discussions if there is no impact created. So I go and give that kind of examples of what we're doing, number one, and then what we've done for other customers, and then give them a context that how, buildings of the future looks like. Buildings of the future, and why I say buildings? Because 70% of your built environment, if you look at any city, is the real estate, is buildings, right? So we're now talking about software-defined buildings. And when I mean software-defined buildings, is like, let's say, there are lots of fit-outs that keep on happening, tenants coming in, tenants moving out, there are lots of changes in the office. Now you don't have to do those physical changes in terms of zoning, of FCUs and all that. You can program it, you can use dynamic air conditioning, you can make occupancy sensors talk to HVAC equipments, you can learn from user preferences, you can personalize your experiences, you can do a lot, right? And then after the passive measures taken by architects, consultants, then active energy measures taken by people like us, Schneider, and so on and so forth, and then renewable energy, we then talk about carbon offsets. So we can't just achieve net zero or positive beyond just by having technology alone or by having the right kind of, passive techniques, but also we need to see how we're making an impact on other developments through, offsetting.
Just really quickly, I know we're out of time, but very quickly to you, Ahmed, on how do we get some information from JCI on some of your case studies to look at some of the projects that you've done, particularly on chillers, etc. Where can we get those? What would you recommend we do?
We do have lots of case studies across the world. We do have as well a state-of-art building where we have done in Ireland, which has all the awards from the net zero sustainability lead and everything, because it was not only about the HVAC. We have done a whole building control and monitoring, where it gives an access to everything in the building: parking, coffee machines, air conditioning, access. Even this building is having people who's working for a longer time, and they take their lunch in the office itself. And what does the technology of Johnson Control does? That it monitors the number of people enters to the building within the day, and it gives an indication to the people in the kitchen that today we have only 200 people out of 300, so you need to only be ready for a cooking of 200 people, not 300, and so on. So it gives an analysis for everything. That's all on a platform where you can monitor and control everything within the building, including the HVAC. It all goes through sensors, motion sensors, everything. So those kind of case studies, we can give more details and information to the audience whenever they need. We are available, and we can share such cases.
So please, terrific round of applause for our panel.
Thank you, Louise. Louise, thank you so much for the